What if you found a ship, perfectly seaworthy, stocked with 6 months of food and water, its cargo untouched, yet completely devoid of a single human soul? This isn't the beginning of a work of fiction. It's the unnerving reality that confronted the crew of the Dei Gratia on a cold December day in 1872. They had stumbled upon a ghost ship, a vessel that would sail into legend, leaving behind an echo of a question that has never been answered. What happened to the people aboard the Mary Celeste? The story begins in the bustling port of New York City on November 7, 1872. The American merchant brigantine, the Mary Celeste, set sail for Genoa, Italy. On board was a seasoned and respected captain, Benjamin Briggs, his wife Sarah, their 2-year-old daughter Sophia, and a hand-picked crew of 7 experienced seamen. Their cargo was valuable, 1,701 barrels of industrial alcohol. With a capable captain, a sturdy ship, and a straightforward voyage ahead, there was no reason to suspect anything other than a routine transatlantic crossing. Nearly a month later, on December 4th, another ship, the Canadian brigantine Dei Gratia, was navigating the choppy waters of the Atlantic, approximately 400 nautical miles east of the Azores. Her captain, David Morehouse, knew Captain Briggs, and their ships had left New York only days apart. So when his crew spotted a vessel sailing erratically, its sails in disarray, he was immediately concerned. As they drew closer, they recognized the distinctive form of the Mary Celeste, but hailing the ship yielded only an unnerving silence. Captain Morehouse sent his first mate, Oliver DeVoe, and a small party to board the mysterious vessel. What they discovered was a scene of eerie normalcy and profound abandonment. The ship was under partial sail but unmanned, drifting aimlessly. There were no signs of a struggle, no evidence of piracy or violence. The crew's personal belongings were still in their quarters, untouched. The ship's cargo of alcohol was largely intact, and a 6-month supply of food and water remained in the stores. The unsettling details began to accumulate. The ship's only lifeboat was missing. The navigational instruments of Captain Briggs were gone, along with the ship's papers. In the captain's cabin, they found personal items scattered, including a sheathed sword under the bed. A slate in the mate's cabin held the last entry, noting the ship's position on the morning of November 25th, 10 days prior, near the Azores island of Santa Maria. More than 3 feet of water sloshed in the hold, a significant but not critical amount for a vessel of its size. The crew of the Dei Gratia made a decision. They would split their own crew, undermanned as it would leave them, to sail the deserted Mary Celeste to the nearest port. After a slow and difficult journey, both ships arrived in Gibraltar, where the peculiar case was immediately brought before the Vice Admiralty Court. The salvage hearing, intended to be a simple matter of reward, quickly spiraled into a full-blown investigation, fueled by suspicion and the utter strangeness of the circumstances. The man leading the inquiry, Attorney General Frederick Solly Flood, was a man inclined towards suspicion. He found the entire narrative presented by the Dei Gratia crew to be highly suspect. How could a perfectly seaworthy ship be abandoned by its experienced captain and crew? The idea of a panicked evacuation made no sense. Flood was convinced that foul play was the only logical explanation, and his initial gaze fell squarely upon Captain Morehouse and his men. Solly Flood's theory was that the crew of the Dei Gratia had stumbled upon the Mary Celeste, murdered everyone on board, and concocted the story of the abandoned ship in order to claim the salvage reward. He pointed to what he believed were suspicious marks on the ship's rail, which he interpreted as evidence of violence, and a sword found in Captain Briggs's cabin that he claimed had been cleaned of blood. The investigation became a grueling ordeal for the Dei Gratia crew, who found themselves accused of a horrific crime. The investigators meticulously examined the Mary Celeste. They noted that While the cargo of industrial alcohol was mostly secure, 9 of the barrels were found empty. This detail sparked another theory from Solly Flood. Perhaps the crew of the Mary Celeste had broken into the cargo and, in a drunken frenzy, mutinied and murdered Captain Briggs, his wife, and daughter, before fleeing in the lifeboat. This narrative painted the lost crew as villains, a stark contrast to the reputable image of Captain Briggs. However, as the investigation wore on, little concrete evidence emerged to support either of Solly Flood's dark theories. The supposed bloodstains on the sword were tested and found not to be blood. The marks on the rail were deemed inconclusive. Those who knew Captain Briggs and his crew vehemently defended their characters, finding the idea of a drunken mutiny completely unbelievable. Captain Briggs was a devout Christian and a teetotaler, known for his fairness and integrity. The court proceedings dragged on for 3 months, a testament to the perplexing nature of the case. Despite the Attorney General's fervent suspicions, no proof of foul play by the De Gracia crew could be established. They were never charged with any crime, but the shadow of doubt lingered. The court ultimately awarded them a salvage payment, but it was a fraction of what they might have expected, a clear signal that the authorities remained unconvinced of their complete innocence. With the official investigation concluding in a cloud of ambiguity, the mystery of the Mary Celeste was released into the public domain, where it captured the imagination of the world. The lack of a definitive answer created a vacuum that was quickly filled with speculation, rumor, and increasingly fantastical theories. The ship became a legend, a byword for unexplained disappearances at sea, and the story grew with each retelling, blurring the lines between fact and fiction. One of the earliest and most enduring theories was that of piracy. The Atlantic in the 19th century could be a dangerous place, and the idea of a ruthless attack was plausible to many. However, this theory crumbled under scrutiny. Pirates would have undoubtedly plundered the valuable cargo and the personal belongings of the crew and passengers. The fact that everything of value was left untouched made the piracy explanation highly unlikely. There were no signs of a battle or struggle on board. Another line of speculation focused on the ship's cargo. The 1,701 barrels of alcohol were potent and potentially volatile. The foul play theory of a drunken mutiny was largely dismissed, but what if the alcohol played a different role? A new hypothesis emerged. Perhaps some of the barrels had leaked, releasing flammable vapor into the confined space of the hold. The fear of an imminent and catastrophic explosion could have been enough to convince Captain Briggs to order a temporary evacuation. This alcohol vapor theory gained traction. It suggested a scenario where, smelling the fumes and perhaps hearing a rumbling sound from the hold, Captain Briggs ordered everyone into the lifeboat as a precaution. They might have attached a line to the Mary Celeste, intending to wait at a safe distance for the perceived danger to pass. A sudden storm or an unexpected parting of the tow line could have separated the small, vulnerable lifeboat from the much larger ship, leaving them lost at sea. The 9 empty barrels found during the initial inspection seemed to support this idea. While they were made of American white oak, which is less porous, it was conceivable that a change in temperature and pressure could have caused some leakage. This theory provided a rational explanation for a sudden, panicked, but orderly abandonment of a perfectly sound ship. It painted Captain Briggs not as a man who lost his nerve, but as a prudent leader taking what he believed was a necessary precaution to protect his family and crew. Yet, like all the others, this theory had its weaknesses. When the salvage crew boarded the Mary Celeste, the main hatch was secure. If there had been a fear of explosion from vapor buildup, one would expect the hatches to have been opened to ventilate the hold. The theory hinges on a moment of perceived peril that may not have existed, leading a highly experienced captain to take the ultimate risk of abandoning his vessel for the uncertainty of an open-boat voyage. As the years turned into decades, the theories became more imaginative. The rise of interest in the paranormal and the unexplained offered new, more sensational possibilities. Some suggested the involvement of a giant squid or another unknown sea monster that dragged the crew from the deck. Others pointed to supernatural forces, whispering that the Mary Celeste had sailed into a dimensional rift or a cursed patch of ocean, like the later conceived Bermuda Triangle. The story was famously sensationalized by Arthur Conan Doyle, the creator of Sherlock Holmes, in an 1884 short story. Though a work of fiction, his tale of a vengeful former slave taking over the ship cemented the Mary Celeste in popular culture and introduced many of the more lurid and fabricated details that are still associated with the story today, such as meals left uneaten on the tables and still warm cups of tea. These details were pure invention, but added to the ship's mystique. Another proposed explanation involves a natural disaster, such as a waterspout or a sudden, violent squall. The Atlantic is known for its unpredictable and ferocious weather. A sudden, terrifying weather event could have damaged the ship in a way that wasn't immediately obvious to the salvage crew, causing Captain Briggs to fear the vessel was about to founder. This could have prompted a hasty departure into the lifeboat, which was then overwhelmed by the same storm. A variation on this theme involves a seaquake, a submarine earthquake that can generate powerful and disorienting waves and tremors. Such an event could have been terrifying enough to warrant abandoning ship. The sloshing water in the hold, combined with the unsettling motion of a seaquake, might have led Captain Briggs to believe the Mary Celeste was taking on water far faster than it actually was, leading to a fatal miscalculation. A more recent and forensic approach to the mystery has focused on a combination of plausible events. This theory, pieced together by documentarian Anne MacGregor, suggests a perfect storm of non-lethal problems that collectively led to a tragic decision. It begins with the fact that the Mary Celeste had recently undergone a significant refit and had been carrying a cargo of coal on a previous voyage. This could have left coal dust and debris in the ship's pumps. A malfunctioning pump would have made it difficult for Captain Briggs to accurately gauge how much water was in the hold. With the ship already having battled heavy weather for 2 weeks after leaving New York, seeing any amount of water might have been cause for alarm. The ship's chronometer was also reportedly inaccurate, making navigation difficult. This combination of factors could have created a high-stress environment. According to the ship's log, on the morning of November 25th, they were within sight of land, the island of Santa Maria in the Azores. This is a crucial detail. An experienced captain would be extremely reluctant to abandon his ship in the middle of the open ocean. However, abandoning ship with land in sight is a much more reasonable proposition. The theory posits that Briggs, unable to determine if his ship was sinking and finally having reached land, made the calculated decision to take to the lifeboat. He may have intended to row to the island, or perhaps simply to maintain a safe distance from the ship until he could be sure it was sound. But the weather in the Azores is notoriously fickle. A sudden change in wind and sea conditions could have quickly swamped the small lifeboat or pushed it away from both the Mary Celeste and the island, sealing the fate of all 10 people on board. The unmanned Mary Celeste, meanwhile, simply drifted on, a silent testament to their disappearance. This multifaceted theory seems to be the most logical breakthrough in the case. It doesn't rely on a single, dramatic event, but on a series of unfortunate, plausible circumstances that led an experienced and rational captain to make a fatal error in judgment. It explains the orderly but hasty abandonment, the missing navigational tools, and the fact that the ship itself was left in a perfectly seaworthy condition. It provides a human explanation for an event that has long been shrouded in the supernatural. After the salvage hearings in Gibraltar, the Mary Celeste was refitted and returned to sea under new ownership. However, the ship seemed to carry its tragic history like a curse. It became an unprofitable vessel, passing through the hands of 17 different owners over the next 12 years, none of whom found success with her. Her reputation as a ghost ship and an unlucky vessel preceded her on every voyage, a constant reminder of the 10 souls who had vanished from her decks. The final, ignominious chapter for the Mary Celeste came in 1885. Her last captain, G.C. Parker, in a desperate act of insurance fraud, deliberately wrecked the ship by running it onto the Rochawa Reef off the coast of Haiti. He had hoped the vessel would sink, allowing him to claim the insurance money on a worthless cargo he had loaded. However, the ship refused to cooperate, stubbornly remaining on the reef without sinking. The attempted fraud was discovered, and Parker was ruined. The damaged and battered hull of the Mary Celeste was left to be broken apart by the sea and the elements on the Haitian reef. It was an inglorious end for a ship that had become one of the most famous vessels in maritime history. Her physical presence was gone, but her story, her mystery, was now permanently etched into the annals of the sea. The legacy of the Mary Celeste is not just that of an unsolved mystery. It is a profound maritime parable about the power and indifference of the ocean. It speaks to the vulnerability of even the most experienced sailors when faced with the unpredictable forces of nature. The story endures because it lacks a conclusion. The absence of the crew, of Captain Briggs and his family, leaves a void that our imagination rushes to fill. They were never seen or heard from again. Over a century and a half later, the name Mary Celeste is synonymous with the term ghost ship. Her tale has inspired countless books, documentaries, and films, each attempting to shed new light on the old mystery. While modern analysis has provided plausible explanations, no one can say with absolute certainty what happened in those final moments. The sea has kept its secret. We are left with the haunting image of a ship sailing on its own, a silent vessel carrying a full cargo and a 6-month supply of provisions, but no crew. It is a chilling reminder that sometimes there are no easy answers. The story of the Mary Celeste forces us to confront the unknown, to ponder the thin veil between a routine voyage and a timeless, unsettling mystery that drifts forever on the vast, unforgiving expanse of the open ocean.